Welcome back. I am John P. Today, we are going to be answering your questions that you have asked me on my Instagram, The Real John P. I receive questions and comments and inquiries all the time here, whether it's about Del Rey watch or my personal collecting or behind the scenes of what it's like to be a watch dealer and collector, just handling so many watches. So this is kind of where I like to funnel all the questions, and occasionally I'll do these Q&As where you can ask exactly what you are thinking, whether it's advice, watch collecting, tips on different watches to put into your collection, whether something will go up, something will go down. I answer these questions there, so check it out, Instagram, The Real John P. Also, please do not forget to check out delreywatch.com, where you can see so many cool watches. Federico, myself, and the team have been working tirelessly to offer to you to add to your collections, especially during this holiday season. So I have my laptop here, and I'm going to be answering the questions you have asked me. Before I do that, on the wrist today, I have a Breguet Classique. This is going to be a very limited Breguet Classique in yellow gold with a co-signed or co-branded Tiffany dial. I really love this watch, even though I've kind of butchered it a little bit with this aftermarket white strap with rainbow stitching. You can see this on my Instagram, The Real John P. So let's jump into it. The first question is, I'm looking for a watch for a gift for Christmas in the $200 to $300 price point, but the important thing is it should be a quality watch. What should I do? Well, you can go one of two ways. You can try to go Swiss, and there's really going to be only one Swiss watch that I could really recommend at this price point, because when you get into Swiss watches at this price point, there is some cutting of corners, and it's understandable, right? I mean, we're talking about a type of watch that oftentimes sells for many times the requested price point here. So you can go with something like the Tissot that's going to be pictured here, or you could go with something like a Seiko. Seiko makes great watches for the price point, really rugged and durable. You can go with a Seiko 5, and there's dozens and dozens at the very least in the modern collection. So you really can't go wrong with either this Tissot or the Seiko at this price point. Other than that, it can be kind of difficult today at this price point. Next, where do you recommend to find the best watch straps? I see a lot of offerings, but I'm not sure who carries the best. Well, it's kind of interesting. If you follow this channel, you know that I have been talking about watch straps, custom watch straps, my own watch strap brand for quite some time. I've visited so many different factories, especially years ago. We thought of offering them through Del Rey Watch, but we just kind of got too busy working with the actual watches as the watch market really grew. So what recently I've done is I started a watch strap company where I actually work directly with the same leather workers and artisans that produce the watch straps for some of the biggest and best watch brands that you know and love. And I offer a very choice selection on a website now. The website is called Sinclair Straps, link here below and also in the description below. Make sure to check out Sinclair Straps. The straps really are a great quality. This is one of the straps. This line, the rainbow line, is not quite out yet, but the interesting thing to keep in mind is these are the same straps that you're going to find elsewhere selling for several times the price point, including from manufacturers of watches themselves. So truly, the last few years, I personally have been putting all of these watch straps on my personal watches, and now you too can do the same. SinclairStraps.com. Next question. Hi, fan here that moved to Miami. What is the best vintage dealer in the area? Well, the thing is with watch dealers is a watch dealer is only as good as their last deal. And so I don't recommend other watch dealers. I'd recommend myself. I'd recommend Del Rey Watch, delreywatch.com. My business partner, Federico Talks Watches, who is one of the co-owners at Del Rey Watch. But other than that, I couldn't really recommend too many other people. I'd say if you're looking for ultra high-end vintage, check out Eric Wind at Wind Vintage. Really trustworthy guy, great friend of mine. I know him very well. But other than that, I wouldn't recommend too many people because, once again, watch dealers are only as good as their last deal. And the reality is, I'm kind of in my own segment in the watch industry, and it's difficult to keep tabs on what everyone is doing. So short but long answer is myself or Eric Wind or Federico Talks Watches. Next question, and this is from a friend Felipe of mine, is, hey, are you going to sell me the Daytona? Yes, we've had a couple of Rolex Daytonas in at Del Rey Watch, and it's a watch model that has never been more popular than today. if you want it, you can buy it, but unfortunately market prices are wild right now, so it's kind of it's a seller's market, but keep in mind, as dealers, we also had to pay quite a premium for it, so the market's kind of bonkers when it comes to Rolex, and the Daytona is not an exception. Next question I was asked is, what brands make the most beautiful dials? Now, this question is very subjective, right? I think it goes without saying that you could say who makes the most intricate dials, and that's just going to be a byproduct of the amount of labor that was put into the production of the dials. But when it comes to the beauty in the dials, personally, and this is a question and almost a debate we had in the office with myself, our operations director, John Hotchman, I think Federico was there, and maybe even Carlos, our photographer, by the way, who does a fabulous job on all of our products. But we had this conversation of who is left in watches that do simple classic dials. And as I look down at my wrist wearing a Breguet, I think Breguet is probably one of the last that haven't really fallen victim or prey to the kind of the modernization that's happening with the dial creation today. Look at the Patek Philippe 5711 Tiffany blue dial. That's something and a dial color that I never would have thought from the most conservative old world watch brand to exist, but they did it truly in limited production numbers, but they did it. And so when it comes to the beauty for myself, I really do enjoy classic, simple, and I think that when we're considering these things, you know, that kind of classic Roman numeral dial with the guilloche and the classical patterns, I think Breguet is doing such a phenomenal job today, and they really always have, and I have never seen them really deviate from that. So I personally am really liking the dials on Breguet watches today. Let me know what you think about dials in the comments below. And by the way, there's so many other brands I could have mentioned for so many different reasons. Some brands do different things, Fume dials and so many other kind of interesting dial variations, Aventurine dials, you name it, gem set dials, but maybe I'll do a dial video in the future because we could jump a little bit more in depth on that one. Next question is, what are your thoughts on the Tudor Harrods? So this is going to be the Tudor Black Bay with the green variation for the Harrods luxury department store in the UK. So the interesting thing about this is when these came out, they were super limited. You couldn't get your hands on them, and the prices skyrocketed. I mean, some of these were selling for $10,000 US or equivalent. Plus, the demand has kind of come down because Tudor has so many different variations out there. Tudor will custom make watches for different companies. There's Google Tudors, there's Ed Sheeran Tudors, and so many other brands that have had custom made Tudor watches, including the Qatar Tudor Black Bays, which we've had at Del Rey Watch. And there's so many other limited edition Tudors that are kind of out there floating around, and Harrods not really the only game in town, whereas for a while they were. Is it green? Is green hot? Yes. But it seems like they're still producing them and selling them through the stores. And because of that, I don't know that we can truly consider this to be limited. Sure, I mean, it might be a very low production volume, but I don't see the Tudor Harrods watch really skyrocketing in terms of price or even climbing up to where they once were. We had one in the door recently, and we sold it for much less than the prices I just quoted. I like the watch. Very cool, interesting colorway. Tudor's doing a lot of great things. But do I think this is going to be some kind of ultimate collectible? No, I just absolutely do not. But if you like it, buy it, and don't let me stop you. Next question is, which watch brand history appeals to you the most? Here's the thing. With watches today, every brand, including micro brands or revitalized or rebooted brands, focus so much on the history, right? How old, how rich is the heritage of this brand? Everyone focuses on it, and if they don't have a rich history, they make one up, or they place it on the shoulders of some guy that played an important role in horological history, right? Think Perolé. Perolé has not been a long-standing brand forever, but when you go to their website, you look at them, they kind of construct this history around the Perolé and, you know, the important contributions to horological history. Look into that. It's a whole thing, and it's very interesting. But when it comes to true history and being an important role in horology, I think that my favorite is none other than the Zenith brand, with specifically the El Primero and kind of the phenomenal story of the watchmaker, the guy that worked for Zenith, hiding the schematics and all the parts and the pieces and the tooling to produce the iconic El Primero movement during the quartz crisis behind a wall. And then when Rolex wanted to have an automatic chronograph for the Daytona, they needed a movement producer to make this. And so, you know, there was a scramble, and Zenith pulled these out. Boom, the El Primero comes back. And this guy that did that was kind of now he's known, but for a long time he was a very unknown hero with watch enthusiasts and geeks. So that whole story, and I've done videos on this in the past, I'll put a link in the description below, but the story of the Zenith El Primero is truly amazing, and without this person that had the foresight and really truly believed in this movement, and I guess the Zenith brand, without him, we wouldn't have so many cool watches that we're making videos about, or people wait in line outside of authorized dealers to purchase, right? Like the Daytona. If they didn't have the movement, would Rolex have spent the time producing the movement, or would have they just kept the Daytona to be a manual wind chronograph going forward into the future? Who knows? Only, we can only speculate, but very cool history, and it's not made up, which I really like about that. I'm sure you can tell by the way I've kind of carried on with this story. Next question is, what is the next watch in your collection? It's kind of funny. I just purchased for myself a new two-tone Explorer 36 millimeter. I know some of you are probably saying, well, that's not a very interesting looking watch. The Explorer doesn't belong in two-tone. I personally really enjoyed it. I liked it. But the interesting thing is, and this is something you need to keep in mind, is we got it in the door. Our watchmaker looked at it. John Hodgman looked at it. Through his advanced loop system, he has some of the best loops that we have truly in the industry. We have a very nice loop system, and there was a hair inside of the watch, and I had to send it back to the dealer that I got this from, but it didn't pass through our watchmaking. It didn't pass through a couple things, and for us, we always, especially at Delray Watch, we err on the side of caution, and it's just not something that Rolex would do, right? Rolex wouldn't put a hair in the watch. It wouldn't pass quality control. Especially if we can find it, our watchmaker can find it. We're not Rolex, but we do have Rolex-trained watchmakers, that's for sure. And so unfortunately, I did have to send that back to the dealer I got it from. It's very likely that a watchmaker touched it for some reason and introduced some things into the sealing of the case, and that's why you have the hair. Probably nothing wrong with the actual watch, but just that alone kind of... I'm very conservative when it comes to the watches we bring in, especially in my personal collection as well. So I sent it back, but I am very seriously considering adding that watch to my collection and finding another one floating around. I just like it, right? Gold's not always for me, although I'm wearing a gold watch, but I just thought it was so cool, and I think there's not a lot of demand today, which means there's not going to be a lot floating around. Rolex is not going to produce a lot of them, and this is going to make the watch in the future, in my opinion, very desirable. What do you think about the two-tone Explorer, Rolex Explorer 36 millimeter? Leave that in the comments below. Next question, and this is a question I'm asked every day of my life. And this question is, will the Rolex market crash? I think it just depends on if the world is going to end, right? If the equities markets and all the exchanges and everything that is tied to assets go down, Rolex will go with it, right? You have a lot of casual buyers. But other than that, I do see Rolex prices staying pretty stable right now, but I cannot predict the future when it comes to what's going out there. No one really can, right? You can read a news story where one expert analyst says, oh, equities are going to go up, and then the very same day, another one says they're going to go down. So for me, as a watch dealer, collector, to come out and make speculation on that can be very difficult, but I jump a little bit more into detail in other videos that I've done recently, so make sure to check those out for more of a deep dive on my opinions. Next question. Hi, I met you recently at an event. Do you ever go to watch meetups? The reality is I don't go to a lot of watch meetups. I would in the past, but they can oftentimes be conflicting with my schedule. I live in the Palm Beach area, and now a lot of these events are happening in Miami, so it's also a bit of a drive. Sometimes I go to these events, especially if there's something very cool or interesting happening, or if I have a meeting or something along those lines, I'll go to the events. But especially during, since everything shut down during COVID, a lot of things went digital. I don't think that these meetup events really just happen anymore like they used to. But I'm very open to it, so if there's a cool watch meetup or something like that happening, make sure to reach out and send an invitation my way, and if it works, I'd be glad to join you. And if you ever see me out in public, please feel free to come up, show me the watch you're wearing. I always like talking with watch collectors. It's a lot of fun. It's really cool to hear people's perspectives. And lastly, I see watches advertised as Swiss, but they are inexpensive. Is this possible? It's possible, and it has to do with the way that the watches are able to be stamped Swiss from the Swiss really from the Switzerland country's regulation and the way that they have the rulings on producing products with the country's name on it. So the reality is you can have a Swiss watch and have it be inexpensive, right? That's relative, but let's say $500 and under. How they do this is the parts are generally produced in China or places in Asia. They ship them over and they're assembled or put together in Switzerland, and it meets the requirements. You know, they're using a Swiss movement, of course, but a lot of the pieces and components are going to be made elsewhere. They bring it back, they put it together, and then it becomes Swiss. So there's still Swiss people or people in Switzerland working on it, but they also import labor from around the world as well to try to like curb the cost and reduce the production cost of the watches. So they use every trick that they can to be able to still stamp it Swiss, mass produce, and sell the watches. Tighter margin, smaller margin, but it's a higher volume game, and ultimately they hope to get you into their more expensive pieces as time goes on. But what do you guys think about these questions? Please leave your feedback in the comments below. Also, I kind of switched over the set a little bit for this video, as well as changed up the camera. So I kind of upgraded the camera really big, but it's much more difficult, and the editing is much more daunting, right? This is going to be a raw shot video, and it's going to be much more daunting of a process. I'm a technology guy by nature, not necessarily a photographer, but I'm learning. It's a lot of fun. So let me know what you think about the video quality as well. I do appreciate it. Make sure to check out delraywatch.com, Sinclair Straps for the best premium watch straps, and also check me out on Instagram, The Real John P. Thanks, guys. You've been chatting with John P. Ciao.